Start streaming. Start recording. Perfect timing. My cat wants to go out now. All right, we're live. Yeah, a lot of new stuff happening behind the scenes. So we certainly hope that everybody is able to see us now live. As you can tell, some of our graphics are starting to change, and they're going to change a lot more in the next week or two. We've got some really cool graphics I'm working on. You know, it's costing a little bit of money, but that's what we have to do to up our game here. And hopefully, if you like what you see, you can always hit that thanks icon. Any additional money that you can lend us to help us, and you'll see what I'm talking about. We're going to put some really cool graphics up here really soon. And now, we've moved on from Skype over to another program called Video Ninja. It's a pretty new program, and it's working well for us, but it's a trial by error. This is our very first live show that we're doing in conjunction with Video Ninja, which we've only done about a handful of shows with. So a lot of newness going on, but within the next couple of weeks, again, bear with us if it's not the perfect broadcast. But once we get on a roll here, it's going to be awesome. So how's it going, Eric?
Going well. Good to be back kind of on the NASCAR side again after a week off.
Yeah, that we actually had 2 weeks off with the All-Star race, so no more weeks off though.
Yeah. Last week was the true off week till Phoenix. 20 straight weeks to the finish line now.
Yep, and I guess if I had to ask you, I know it's not the halfway point, but without a break. By the way, you can send us a chat message too during the show. Don't forget that. Questions, comments. Let us know what's on your mind. Okay, so if you had to do a story for where we are right now in NASCAR season, you had to put a label to it, what would it be?
Ooh. I mean, we're not quite halfway. We're getting there. We're over halfway through the regular season, I guess. So I'd say we're
when is the official halfway when we include the playoffs?
So let us see. I can count this real quick here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I would say next week Chicago, when you get that race done, you're halfway. That's 18 races.
Really?
36. Yeah.
So we're a week away.
Yeah, because this will be the 17th race. So you have 36 points paying races. I don't count the All-Star race since it's not points paying and we don't race there at all this year. So this would be the 17th race. So I'd say going into Atlanta, where now we'd be crossed over that second half of the season.
Well, I'll see if CJ's available in the next week or two. If we can't I know how busy he is, like we all are. So if we can get him on as sort of like a halfway kind of show, that'd be great. But we'll have a lot more to talk about anyway with the new Chicago race, that's for sure.
Yep.
We can only keep our fingers crossed. Since we did have the week off, we have a lot to catch up on. One of the things we want to talk about is that it looks like we are now zeroing in on July 9th, Atlanta, as our live broadcast of the last hour on that race day. So that's the way it looks right now. And don't forget, I mean, the good thing is, as far as what caused us to reschedule the last time, that's not coming into play anymore. Baseball season's over.
Yep.
So
it is.
Yeah. So that, but you never know. Other things can come into play. So we'll keep you updated. And in the next week? What is it? 2 weeks. Well, that'll be our last opportunity the week before Atlanta to let you know if everything is still on. And again, that will be the opportunity for you guys to check in just like we're doing right now. And Eric and I will be talking as just like we're sitting in the living room together watching the race and describing it and so forth. And Atlanta should be a good race for us to do for the first time. And then if all goes well, we will target the next one being the Daytona race on the 26th. So a lot, of course, on the line potentially for that one. Do you have anything scheduled, by the way, as far as I know? You, of course, they came to you for the past month, IndyCar. you have any trips planned between now and the end of the season?
Yeah, next week, Mid-Ohio. Then you got Iowa, July. I know that's Pocono weekend. And then Nashville that's the first weekend of August. And then back home.
So it's all IndyCar.
Yeah, all IndyCar. NASCAR will figure out in between there which ones we get to. I know, obviously, Phoenix at the end.
What's the difference between your capable? Because, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not. But are you doing the IndyCar on-site press more because it's more? Are you being received easier? Is it a much better transition? Are you able to talk to more drivers and put yourself in a position where you can interact more as opposed to what happens when you're covering NASCAR?
Yeah, a little bit of that. I know probably because it's kind of in my backyard, like where NASCAR is more based in Charlotte, North Carolina. IndyCar is my backyard, so I've got.
So if you were in Charlotte, you might be doing a little bit more NASCAR.
Different. Yeah. So but you develop relationships and contacts and friendships with drivers and team. It's kind of plus IndyCar is a lot more accessible than NASCAR on a race weekend. IndyCar, it's more laid back. You can walk up and talk to pretty much. I mean, great, you're not going to bother somebody in the middle of a practice run or something like that. But NASCAR, the drivers seem to only talk to you if it's a scheduled media availability, and you really don't get a chance to talk to them much. They bring the top, I think it's 20 or 25 points through, and just get a few minutes then. IndyCar, it's a full weekend. You can talk to drivers multiple times. A lot of the NASCAR, it's hard to talk to them. It's hard to, hey, Chase Elliott, how's it going? They'll just ignore you. I mean, not just because they don't like you. It's just, they're just off in their own little world. They don't, I mean, it doesn't matter to me or Bob Pockris. They're going to do the same thing. They just don't. IndyCar, you feel like you're friends and building stories. NASCAR, you feel like you're bothering them. That's kind of the difference.
Okay. Interesting.
The NASCAR guys, if they could go through a whole weekend and talk to no person, they would be completely fine with it. IndyCar, they're more outgoing.
Is that a financial thing?
Probably. Well, the other IndyCar thing, speaking of finance, is most of the races are close to they're within a day's drive. So they're more of a Midwest-based series. But
okay.
It's NASCAR drivers are not, other than IndyCar guy like Joseph Newgarden won the Indy 500 Mid-Ohio next week, and I could walk up and have a conversation with him. It wouldn't be a problem. Chase Elliott in Nashville this weekend, there's not a soul that's going to be able to walk up and have a conversation with him in the garage. NASCAR drivers just, maybe because they get pulled in a bunch of different directions already with sponsor obligations and stuff, but they're just not as receptive.
So it's almost like the difference between covering an NFL team and a college football team.
Pretty much, yeah. It's NASCAR, they do not want to talk to I mean, you could probably go up and talk to the mid-level guys, but you're not going to get much traction out of that anyways. Yeah. They just, not a wrong word for it, but it's more or less like the stuck-up version. It's just hard to, and even some of the media availabilities, you can tell they don't want to be there. Like, the only time you get a chance to talk to them is a scheduled media availability, and a lot of times when they're there, sometimes it depends on what mood they're in. What you get.
But you look at it more as, again, that it's because, like, if the IndyCar series wound up, if you just moved all those drivers into NASCAR and had them do what the NASCAR drivers were doing for a year, they would eventually become the same.
I think so. I think it's just the culture.
Getting distracted and pulled left and right all over the place. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more the culture. And I just use that as a big overview. I don't use it just me personally. I think it's just most media in general. It is IndyCar, I mean, you can walk up and talk to anybody at any given time. Granted, there's obviously limitation. Like, you're not going to walk in their pit box when they're practicing. But
well, hey, we'll take advantage of it. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. And look, I've noticed too, though, that like, and we're not going to talk IndyCar here, but I just wanted to, again, comparison's sake, like Alex Palou has been winning. And it was interesting because even one of the members of the press asked him about whether or not he was getting enough attention from the media in Spain. And it was almost like, well, yeah, because he's sure not getting a lot of attention here. I mean, I put an Alex Palou press conference on there, and it's like nobody cares. So that's the difference as well. And there are a lot of drivers, and Palou's not from the U.S., and I get that, but it doesn't matter. You get a U.S. driver, and not many people are going to care. You have to really go back to the superstars, like the really, the Helio Castronevises, and so there's only a select number of guys in IndyCar that get a lot of attention.
It is. If we did this in the past, this a few years ago, but I remember me and a buddy of mine that works in the media, we just kind of sat in the stands, and he did some like betting. He had like a deal with like Caesars or something, or he had like some betting cards. Like you can hand it like, hey, if I'll give you a betting card if you can name me 5 race car drivers right now. And ironically enough, almost every person he talked to never named a single IndyCar driver who was right in front of him, and that was kind of making his point.
Crazy.
And it's like their pits are right there in front of you, like or NASCAR like practice. For those that have been in an IndyCar race, like NASCAR, they drive out of the garage. They kind of in the practice sessions, they're in the garage, or they come to pit road now with this P&Q, and they're just kind of there, and then they go back. But IndyCar, like your pit road, it's set up, pit box, everything. You drive in, it's all right there. And it just was baffling that it's like going to an NFL game and say, name me 5 NFL players, and there's the game going on in front of you.
It's pretty bad.
People are not mentioning any of the players currently on the field right in front of you. And that's where the difference is.
Well,
it's starting to get better.
There are a lot of positives to it, though, because all you have to do is compare IndyCar to F1. And I'm sorry. And I really have been very quiet. I haven't even joked with CJ yet about it. But I mean, how do you watch that? It's like one guy.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I mean, I don't know what you're watching. You're obviously not going to the track to watch the race. You're going there to be a part of an event, to hang out with a lot of people. That's all you're doing. You're not going there because you're interested in watching the race. Now, maybe you're interested in watching specific things, like you're some sort of car dude that just loves to be there and feel it and look at things that the regular person has no idea what the hell they're looking at. But other than that, you're not going there to, I'm going there to see who wins the race.
Yeah.
Who else is going to win the race?
It's F1, and I don't mind F1, but I also, I guess to put it bluntly, it's not a race. It's an insult to the word race. I don't even know what part of it is a race. IndyCar has more passes in one race than F1 has in multiple seasons combined.
Awful.
It's like it is the worst. There's no passing. There's no real strategy. It's bad. They call it a spectacle, and I don't even know if that's an insult to the word spectacle. I mean, it is a snooze fest, and I think they're probably getting close to that downward trend. I think because that Netflix series, and it's kind of drove people to it. But man, these people say NASCAR is bad. F1, NASCAR is nothing compared to F1.
Yeah,
NASCAR, at least, it is the worst.
Yeah,
it's one of the worst motorsports out there right now.
I'd rather watch the race at Illinois in NASCAR. Because even when the race starts, I still have no idea who's going to win.
Exactly. F1, you already know.
Yeah.
We already know who won the next F1 race, and it's still next week. It's Max Verstappen. He's going to win.
It's bad. But again, what I was saying with IndyCar, that's the thing I've noticed over the last couple of years is, man, there's a lot of parity. You don't know from week to week who is going to win. Now, yes, you have a better idea when qualifying is over. No question. It's a lot different than NASCAR. NASCAR right now is, you don't know anything pretty much until the race is over. But IndyCar, I mean, there's a lot of parity, and it's that's a good thing. But maybe they just the thing they lack, though, is they don't have a superstar.
That's the thing, is they're on that slippery slope where it's like, and Palou's doing it here recently, but he's not a household name, as you kind of need to have somebody get dominant to be that household name where people know you. That's where Joseph Newgarden's Indy 500 win was big. Was it as American? It's an Indy. It's Penske.
He doesn't
but he
have
hasn't
it
won
though.
since.
He doesn't have it. He doesn't have that.
Yeah, you've got to start getting your driver, and it is a risk because you do like the parity because it is. I mean, you go to race weekend for IndyCar, and any of the drivers can win from top to bottom, and that's not because it's a bad series. It's because the cars are so equal and the drivers are so good, and the difference between the top to bottom is less than a second. I mean, you don't have any margin for error.
Yeah.
Their races are shorter, which is nice.
Yep.
Usually it's within a 2-hour window.
Yep.
So where I've always said with NASCAR, if you make a mistake, you got time to make up for it. IndyCar, you don't. There is no time to make up for it. It kind of makes you have to be perfect, which creates more parity. That where F1, it doesn't matter if Verstappen makes a mistake; he still won the race by 20 seconds.
It's terrible.
It is not a good form of motorsports.
All right, now what we're going to do is, because obviously we weren't here last week, let's recap what happened in the road course race. And okay, a lot to talk about here. We had talked about, and the whole deal was that Toyota, Reddick, he won the road course. Yeah, but that's Reddick. Reddick's so good at it, and even Bell at the end of the season. That's just Bell at the end of the last. Yeah, no. All of a sudden, one race, the second race, and there's no more problems anymore with Toyota at road course races. And I got to believe, I'm sure you're frustrated as heck because you weren't able to take. I mean, I was lucky enough to take advantage of the fact that Truex was still 35-1 to win the race. I believe it was 35-1.
Yeah, 35.
Because of his past history, and it actually worked. It was like, there's a change here. So no matter what Denny Hamlin was saying, and he didn't do well the most of the rest of the race after he got off to a good start and qualified on the pole, but still, what was that? What were they just playing coy? We don't really have it's still like it was last year. Or do you think that they were very, very surprised that they did so well?
I think they were surprised in a way, but then now know they've got something. I think last year they were off. There was just nothing.
Yes.
I believe them at that. I mean, the stats showed they were off. And they made adjustments in the offseason, but they just, I think, thought it still didn't matter. And even in COTA, 42 of the 75 laps led was the Toyota camp, but most of that was Tyler Reddick. I think they even saw the data that, there's just things he can do with this car that we can't. But then Toyota and Sonoma, I think they've even upgraded even since COTA, and they're now like, okay, we are legit. That shocked us. That was qualifying. Let's see what we can do in the race now. And 84 of 110 laps led by that camp, and Truex was just so dominant. And Hamlin, I mean, you take that crash out. I mean, it wasn't like he was bad.
Sure.
He wasn't Truex good, but he was a top 5. And Reddick had, till he spun late. I mean, it seemed like he was all up and down. But he had top 10 pace. So, I think right now Toyota, oddly enough, has probably passed Chevrolet in the road course camp.
Now, do you think that's also, but it's still not saying, all right, any Toyota. It's about, okay, now if you are a really good road course driver and you're driving a Toyota, you're fine. So if you're Truex, you're fine. You're Bell, you're fine. But you have to be good. It's just not, because that's what happened. It was Truex was first. The next Toyota was Bell was 9th. And then the next Toyota was Bubba Wallace at 17. So it wasn't like Toyota was dominating the race. It was just because Truex and Bell are very good road course drivers. Yeah,
like Reddick and COTA, same way.
Yes.
So good at road courses. And Truex, I mean, that was the second most wins ever for the driver at Sonoma now. I mean, he's a very good road racer. So it's not like the car is going to carry you for so long. The driver has to be good too. But the car is finally caught up with the talent. I think that's what's shown is now the car. Last year, it was just, I don't think the car, it didn't matter how much talent you had, the car just wasn't there for you. Now absolutely. The car matches the talent. So I think for Chicago, granted, we know nothing because it's a street race and NASCAR's never done this before, but you can't prior to Sonoma, I think you could probably go to that race like, I'll just X all the Toyota drivers. Since we don't really know what's going to go on, let's just pick the best. We'll pick Reddick and we'll pick a couple of injured guys and see where it goes. Now, I think you have to take the Toyota guys very seriously for that race because it's an unknown, but they're 2 for 2 on road courses this year. That's right. And if you go back to the Roval, they're 1-3 in a row. So maybe the tide has turned.
Just recapping the race too, it was Kyle finished second, Logano third. When we go back to Sonoma, or when we are analyzing road course races in general by the end of the season, that's a note that we'll have to take into consideration is that the reason Kyle Busch and Logano were second and third was because of track positioning, luck of the caution, that kind of stuff. Otherwise, maybe they're both around 9th or 10th when it's all said and done. So they really shouldn't have been second and third, but they were, and Kyle just had nothing for Truex. And I was actually surprised though that for as long as they were second and third, that no one else passed them though. They were able to hang in there.
They stayed there. Yeah, and they didn't have a lot of laps, and they were back on. It helped them because they were on that right strategy. That other caution helped. Like, okay, now they're on the same strategy. Now it doesn't matter tire life, and lucked out with the caution coming right after they pitted. But I think the only person that probably was even in Truex's zip code, and he was kind of on the outskirts, but he was in the zip code, was McDowell of all people. I think McDowell had a good car. Buescher did for a little bit, but McDowell is probably the I'd say the second best driver and car out there, which again, road course racer. He's a road course guy. So I feel like we're finally getting to a road course guy that can shine with these cars. But it leads to the other factor. I feel like almost this car is too good for road courses. You get kind of redundant races now without the stage breaks. This car is made to go left and right, kind of made or closer to an IMSA car, what they've talked about. You can kind of see that. Nobody's really making mistakes. You don't see a lot of wrecks. You don't see many spins. And the cream has rows at the top, which granted isn't that what we want. You do want to see the best of the best, but it is also kind of taken the randomness out of road course races, which granted, one could say there really wasn't a lot when Chase Elliott was dominating all these, but you still kind of had that randomness to it.
Yeah.
Now Tyler Reddick is probably the best there is right now in road courses. He won COTA, and one could say Truex is the best there is at Sonoma. Jeff Gordon's the only one that has better stats there, and he's not far ahead of him. So when we go to Road America, there's not much history. Not Road America. I'm sorry. That's the one they just Chicago is next week. There's not much we can go off of.
No.
But when you go to Indy, granted it's only been a few years, but some guys stick out there. Watkins, Glenn. You might as well stick with the guys that are good at those tracks because this is kind of showing they can be good.
Well, that's the other thing too is that I think we have to keep in mind. I know there were still a lot of fans and heard it from viewers in the comment section. It's road course racing, so it's still it's nice and they still like it. But let's remember, because we didn't talk about it, but we kind of had to be reminded, and we were, that Sonoma just is not right now with this car. It's just not a very exciting race. Just isn't compared to the other. Watkins Glen is much better.
Yeah, and it wasn't, if you remember right, it wasn't a few years ago, which is why they made the change to the longer 2.52 mile. They added the carousel back into it, and that didn't do much to it, hence why they moved it back to this one. So it's more of a natural terrain track because there's not any walls, right, that you're really going to hit. There's a lot of free flowing when you get to the back part of the track. I would say it's probably not going to be the best, but it's also, that's kind of part of it.
That's what happens when you have 6 of them. Not every one of them is going to be good. So we're dealing with, one bad race, but it at least is still, like I said, if you like road course races, it's a road course race. So And at least we were surprised, and we were. All right. Fantasy wise, boy, CJ had a big week.
Yeah.
So he more than doubled your points, and your point total shrinking, man. So it's now becoming a nice battle. So you're up by 80 on me
Yep.
and 175 on CJ. And yeah, and CJ now has 8 wins on the season. You only have 3, and you are the leader.
My guys have been they've been very consistent until these last few weeks. And one of the inconsistent races was a double points 600 race. But yeah, they as of late have calmed it down a little bit, which I need to turn it back around. They're not getting a bunch of wins, but they've gotten a bunch of top fives and top tens, which have kept them afloat. But I was looking like, do I need to start making changes? But I still don't know who I can make changes for because Suarez would be the only one, but we've seen him. I mean, he could win at some point.
Yeah, but who would you
has
pick
really
up?
stepped it up. That's what, exactly. There's nobody really out there that's better.
You'd have to make a trade.
And I don't know if that's really worth anybody too.
Yeah, but look, I think what's good about it is ebbs and flows, that kind of thing, and you still have Denny Hamlin, who only has 1 win, and I think we know that he's going to get hot at some point. And and a lot's going to depend on really with your team what happens with Logano and Bell, your 2 leaders right now, and what kind of season they end up having. And for me, it's because Blaney started to get hot, and of course having Larson, that's an easy one. But Chastain is still kind of chilling, hasn't really done much, and I'm not getting a whole lot from my bottom end. Whereas, CJ is, you look at him, and he's got 3 really good drivers: Byron, Kyle Busch, and Martin Truex Jr. He's cooking with those 3 that have given him all 8 wins. He still has Elliott, of course, but he's getting nothing really from anybody else, and that's what's dragging him down.
That's what's kept me afloat was my guys, like I mentioned, they're just all consistent. And then they've kind of gone back. But that's just kind of how their MO is, because we see that Logano does this every year, it seems like. He kind of goes away. And then all of a sudden he will reappear and he'll rattle off 3 wins. Like, oh, where did that come from? Hamlin, as you said, does that. Bell has been kind of doing that lately. He'll like last year, picked up a win in Loudon and off he went. Harvick, he's been the last 2 years has done that. He's gone into Loudon and Michigan lately and just picks up wins. So they're giving me enough to be like, okay, they'll come around. Bowman, we know he was running good before his injury.
He'll get going again. Yeah.
Wallace has given me more than I could expect. It. Same with Keselowski. So they're one of those like I'm not going to overthink it. We'll just leave them alone.
Matter of fact, when CJ scored 290 points last week, it was the most points this season, not including the triple point races, the most points by 30. So that's how big a week it was for CJ to get getting caught up. And
he's got a really good road course team too. If you look at his lineup, that's the other factor was Chase's road course probably. Reddick right now is probably past him, but right before Reddick, Chase was winning like they had 6 of 7 or 7, something crazy.
Yeah.
Kyle's finished second in both races. Truex, we know what he can do. Byron's been good.
And AJ
Gibbs was phenomenal. Allmendinger.
Yep.
Yeah, he's got a really, really good road course team.
And my 5 race win streak for picks has got to give you hope. Because I was not doing well overall 5 races ago, and in 5 races I've improved $766. I went from plus 125, plus 200, plus 245, plus 8, and plus 188. So what do you think about? And remember, and we're going to get into this now, going over picks and everything, and we're also going to get to your comments over the last couple of weeks, the listeners, the viewers, the strategy of me mostly ignoring these favorites, these heavy favorites, just completely ignoring them for the most part, and going with the next group of guys.
It's paid off. I mean, and I've noticed this week some of the odds are getting back longer again. Where we had several. It seemed like it was Hendrick versus the rest or Gibbs versus the rest, and now it's kind of getting condensed again in that middle portion. So it paid off, and it gave me hope. I thought about that making my picks this week because there's some guys I would have stretched on that I'm like, no, I'm going to go with a few that I think will win. And just let's start building this thing back. Let's get a couple wins out of the way. And then, I'm going to start swinging for the fences. The only thing was with Nashville, the race is coming up. I was like, we're going to start
it's a bad track.
Nashville, the only year they ran the next gen was last year. Obviously, everybody. But there was only 1 year history prior. Next week's Chicago. Never been there before on a street race. Then Atlanta is like a super speedway. Then I kind of started got Loudon, Pocono, Richmond, Michigan, Indy road course, Watkins Glen, another road course. That's going to be the make or break for me is hitting 2, maybe 3 of those weeks the way you've hit these last 5, and I'm back in the hunt again. But I've got to win these next few. So that's why you kind of went a hybrid version of that this week. I didn't go with as many people, but I also went with ones I felt good about. And punted on some that I used to stretch just to try to get the win. So we'll see.
And this is where I'm in the situation CJ was in a few weeks ago when he went into the plus side. But then that's it. Now he's gone back a little bit. The trick is once you're in the plus side, you got to try to stay there. And now this is going to be the big race for me of whether or not I can stay there. Or else am I going to go back to like a 3 or 4 race losing streak and just put myself back into a position where I'm $200 or $300, behind. So we'll see. I'm just glad that things have not gone too crazy regarding, if you are doing really well and your car is, the best car or one of the best cars, he's not getting screwed at the end. Sort of like Blaney and Truex, just to pinpoint a couple of cars. Blaney was pretty much a long shot at the Coke 600, and so was Truex. They were the best cars, but they didn't get screwed late. And that's what was happening a lot earlier in the season is we were picking good cars, and they were getting screwed late. So at least that's happening or not happening. All right, now let's talk about viewer comments. And matter of fact, we didn't get to a couple of these on our last show. This is from a few weeks back. This is from Thanos. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the show and data y'all give on your picks and why you're not picking other drivers, which allows me to make my own informed picks based off some real stats. So that's Thanos. Alan Batt, always nice to see you guys. And Dale Fick. This is the first time I think we've heard from Dale Fick. Goddamn Kenny Powers doing NASCAR now. Love it. What do you think about Kenny Powers?
I don't remember the context of it, but I do. I used to watch that show all the time. I can't remember what. Did he bring Kenny Powers? Did we talk about Kenny Powers?
No.
Or was there
I'm trying to think. Well, was he in Talladega Nights?
No. Oh, you know what? He was in the. I know what he's talking about. Kenny Powers is in the 600. He was in the booth. That's what he's talking about.
What race was he in? What?
He was in the show Eastbound and Down.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah.
And I know what he's talking about now. It's like I was like, what? He was just part of something in NASCAR. He was like a guest analyst for that little bit in the 600. That's.
I mean, do you like that? Do you like seeing Kenny Powers? Does he?
I think he's funny.
Okay.
If it brings more people to watch, I mean, I didn't know he was going to be in there. But yeah, hey, I don't have a problem. It's better than the redundancy that Fox Sports has had in the booth. So
no more Fox.
I think anything's a win at this point.
Yep. MBG 238. Love the road courses. So there you go. John DeRosa wanted to let us know he's into the Discord. Be great to get your post-qualifying takes. All right, that was from last week. And by the way, John donated another $2, so thanks, John.
Thank
And
you.
he's into the Discord. And I want to remind everybody what that means is in the next, I'd say, a week or two, just like we said when we opened the show, a lot of changes, a lot of updates. We have a Discord community, and we are, putting it all together. And so this is going to give us the opportunity to communicate with you guys a lot better than through YouTube in the comment section. So that's coming real soon, and we'll let you know, obviously, when we are all ready to have you guys come on board and join the community. Paul Moss, what happened to the one car? He got ricked. It's a R-I-C-K-D, rickety. What is that? As in Mr. H?
Yeah.
That went over my head. What is that?
Because it would have been Darlington. So when Chastain got into Larson, Skulls Larson into that race, Hendrick kind of went on a tangent about how Chevrolet and Justin Marks would track how they need to talk to him and calm him down, and he's too aggressive, and it doesn't fly in the NASCAR world. He shouldn't race like that. And they did. You can tell Justin Marks mentioned they talked to him, so Chevy probably had an influence in that too. So that's what he means by got ripped. Rick Hendrick kind of went out there and said, "Hey, we need to slow this guy down." He's all those reasons I just said, and he's not been the same since that point. Which I think that's what he's talking because we talked about it.
We did talk about it, yes.
So that's what he's meaning by that.
We'll find out with the week off. We'll see if he's.
We'll get the picks. He's one of the guys I'm watching for that reason because he's good. He's been good at Nashville. He's been on tracks like this.
He should be good this
week. He got a week off. Can he get that aggression back?
All right. So let's get started previewing the race officially. And Kyle Larson is the favorite. Before we get into the drivers and our analysis, our total number of picks that we have all equally picked. Who would that be? We used to have 5 or 6 a race.
Yeah.
And then
where are we down to?
Yeah, we're down to 1 or 2 every week now. And
it's been 1 the last few.
We have 2.
2 this week. I was gonna be my guess was 2. I'm gonna say Truex.
Correct.
And Byron.
Correct. 2 for 2.
All right. 2 for 2.
There you go. So, yeah. A lot of it is because, as I've said before, too, during this stretch, I think it's mainly because I've stayed away so much from a lot of the favorites that the odds were so low, and I've kind of avoided them. But here you go. As an example that out of the top, because I think we could say, even though Byron has 8-1 odds, just like Elliott and Hamlin, that if it was an order, it would be Larson, Kyle, Truex, and then Byron. Byron would have to be the top 8-1. So basically, I've gone with 2 of the top 4 drivers, and I don't usually do that in this stretch, which is probably why we finally, we have 2. But the other thing is CJ does not have. He only has 1 driver past 11-1, and nobody past 16-1. You only have, which is surprising, but we kind of talked about it. You only have 1 driver past 11-1.
Yep.
So let's start with the favorite. So Larson, again, same thing. I've avoided him pretty much for the most part during this stretch, but this was a race I was really close thinking of taking him. And how can you not think of that? Because of the fact that he dominated it the first time a couple years back, leading 264 of 300 laps. Solid again last year. But the thing that once again, it's just he did not have good, and we should note that if you want to take a look at tracks that are the most similar, you look at Darlington and Dover. He didn't fare well, had issues in those races. And those are the types of issues that we've kind of talked about, that he's just so inconsistent right now that it's just hard for me to take him at 5-1 with all these inconsistencies. But yeah, this was a week I was really close to taking him.
Yeah, and like I said, he led all but 36 laps in 2021, fourth last year. And I also looked on paper, it shows Dover was 32nd place finish and Darlington a 20th place finish. But if you remember in Dover, he had a fast car. He was coming, but that was the first thing that kind of sparked the Rick Hendrick thing with Chastain and Larson when Chastain was over aggressive and punted Brendan Poole lap car out of the way, and Poole spun right up into the Larson. Larson had nowhere to go, but he had a good car before that. Darlington, Larson had that thing won. Then that caution came out inside the 20 to go while he was running away with it. He had a couple of right race restarts. He was good. And then Chastain was too aggressive, 6 to go, wrecked Larson again. So if he doesn't get wrecked by Chastain having a hand in both those wrecks, he easily could have won both of those races. So it might be a different story right now. So I thought 5-1. He was good at both tracks, dominated 2021 at this race. And it's not like he was bad last year. He was fourth. So I thought probably deserving 5-1. I'll go his direction.
John texted while you were giving your take in the chat area. I responded. John, by the way, mentioned that the one car is his favorite driver.
There we go.
So
I like it.
My response basically was I wanted to find out from John, because this is new, who was his favorite driver before.
Yeah.
Because Chastain is basically a one-year guy last year. It's not like I can't imagine, John, that you were a Chastain favorite before last year. That would have been crazy, unless you're related to him. But that's maybe it was Kyle Busch, because if he likes Ross Chastain, you would think maybe he's a Kyle Busch guy.
He kind of reminds me of that kind of where it's my wife got in. The reason Kyle Busch was her favorite because she would watch one of those NASCAR top 10 shows. I was watching in bed one night several years ago, and like the top 10 bad boys in NASCAR, they call it. And Kyle was right after Earnhardt or vice versa. They were right there. And she's like, why does everybody love Dale Earnhardt but hate Kyle Busch, but they're the same basically person? And with all the boos, she's like, I'm going to cheer for that guy then. I'll be his fan. And then now she's like mad that everybody is now starting to like him. Like, well, what's going on? So Chastain could be that guy. And I think he's great for the sport. I wish he didn't get slowed down, which we talked about a few weeks ago, was that's what made Ross Chastain was his aggression and his he's got talent, and he had to race that way to get to this point. And I get you are at this point now, but don't stop. He could be that next polarizing, either you love him or hate him type driver, and he doesn't seem to care if people hate him. He's a really nice guy. In fact, a good story about your driver here at Daytona 2 years ago. I'm walking. This is the 500. This is the Friday, so not the duels day. It was the Friday right before the truck race. I'm FaceTiming my kids, and I'm walking around the garage, and I didn't have my headphones plugged in, and I'm walking this way, and I'm just kind of showing them the lay of the land. And they go, "That's Ross Chastain," and he heard them over because he was kind of standing to the side. I kid you not, he walked over to me and had me FaceTime him. He wanted to talk to him.
Really?
It shows you how nice of a guy. Yep, this was last February, not this past February, February before. So, an extremely nice guy. So I FaceTimed him back, and of course they when they saw Ross was on the other end, they started fighting with each other to see who could hold the phone. So a little embarrassed, like, hey, I'll take that phone back. Sorry about that. But he's like, oh, yeah, I got a brother too. We used to that kind of stuff. But a good little story about Ross.
That's cool.
How nice of a guy he is.
Yeah.
But, yeah. If I wasn't in this position, because I don't have favorites, I just like all the good stories, and he'd be one of them. He's a really good guy, and I think he's a hell of a talent.
Well, John said the reason is because he just started to pick up the sport last year.
Perfect.
Basically, because NASCAR became or sports you could bet in his state. Now I don't know what state you were in, where you could start wagering. I know a lot of these states have now opened up for wagering in sporting events. I get that. And I agree with John as far as it being a very good, he says best sport, and I tell this story every several months or so, or at least every year, because you always get new viewers and such. that same thing happened to me. The reason I got hooked was because I had a sponsor on my radio show that was Roadhouse Grill. They were real popular back then, back in 2000. And the connection was Budweiser. Budweiser with the restaurants, and the Budweiser rep was a big NASCAR fan. And so part of the whole deal for them to spend more money with us so we could have a show and they could sponsor it and we could do the shows at Roadhouse Grill was that he was also going to come on and be like the NASCAR analyst. So it was a lot of fun. We had great times. I traveled to like 5 or 6 different tracks, including Daytona and Charlotte and Florida tracks, everything. And but the first one was the NASCAR race. It was the 4th of July race, I believe.
Oh,
I'm not sure if it was
Pepsi
the
500.
500.
It'd be Daytona. It'd be the Pepsi 400. 4th of July.
I think it was the Pepsi 400 then. Yes, pretty sure that was it. And Dale Jarrett won. So whatever that one was, back around 2000.
Yep. I would say you're probably talking the year 2000, around 1, right around that.
And we had a raffle. And you get to pick a driver, and whoever wins. And I picked, and I had Dale Jarrett. And so I'm like now following Jarrett around the track, rooting for him, and that's how I got hooked. And then all of a sudden I started, once I started learning and asking him like hundreds of questions, I was that guy that just I had a question for everything. And so that was a lot of fun. And then I got hooked, and then ever since I've been wagering on NASCAR. So Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr., 7-1. So we both, you and I, well, we all did. We all took Truex. CJ took Kyle. And I just figured, especially after Truex was so nice to me last 2 weeks ago, I wasn't going to go away from him this week, especially. And I think Truex, actually, to tell you the truth, I think Truex should be the favorite of this race, co-favorite with Larson, if anything. Because last year he led 82 laps. He won Dover this year. Yes, he had a bad result at Darlington, but he led 145 laps before the accident. He's got 4 top 5s in his last 6 on the season with 2 wins. So he is the hottest driver right now in the sport. And it's a no-brainer. You have to take Truex as part of your package this week.
It is. And I think it says a lot that they have him at 7-1, even though both of his Nashville finishes are 22nd. But as you just said, he led 82 laps last year, and the only reason he didn't win was that late race caution. And they called him down pit road, and Chase Elliott didn't pit, and he ended up winning. It's like you just gave up the lead on the race that they should have known. Tires weren't degrading much last year, especially since it was a night race, which, oh, by the way, we're running a night race this weekend. So I feel like, as you said, that Darlington, the only reason he didn't win was the boy Chastain, Jonathan Boyd Chastain, he overthought it. In the end of that second stage, where he battled him, so just let him go. Why would you battle him? And he wrecked trying to battle him too hard. It was his own fault, or he probably would have won Darlington too. The Sonoma wins, 7 top 8 finishes, his last 9 points pain races, 3 straight top 5s. Yeah, 7-1 was an absolute no-brainer to go his way. And for Kyle, he's finished second the last 2 weeks. He's got 2 Xfinity Series wins there. He's got 2 Truck Series wins there. However, he's finished 11th and 21st in Cup. And granted, last year he was part of that pit cycle at the end that he probably shouldn't have pitted. He led 54 laps, but he was 21st in Dover this year. It just doesn't – this track hasn't equated much to RCR yet. So for 7 – I thought it's a little high for him to be 7-1. So Truex was the no-play or the no-brainer. Kyle was more of a no-play for me.
Okay. Next up, we have Elliott, Byron, and Hamlin at 8-1. I took, Byron, as we said, we all took Byron. You and CJ took Hamlin. CJ, by the way, went with all 3 of these drivers. So with Elliott, we both agreed to stay away from Elliott. And to tell you the truth, I think the reason was, for me, I think it was simple. It's because I'm trying to, again, I'm not taking all these favorite drivers. And I just don't think Elliott's earned it. It doesn't mean he can't win. He probably has a good chance to win this week because he's the defending champ, and he was third at Darlington. And you kind of get the feeling, all right, well, sooner or later he's going to win, right? That kind of thing. But I just don't think that he should be in this category, or at least I'll put it this way. I'm putting money on these drivers. I'm not going to put money on Elliott when I could put money on Truex and Byron.
Same thinking for me. I wouldn't be shocked if he won. I mean, he was sixth and fourth the two times he's qualified there. Obviously won last year. He was third, as you said, at Darlington. But I just don't know. I just have a hunch, more or less, I guess, that out of all these favorites, him at 8-1 is going to be the one. I don't know why this guy's working on her.
Yeah, I was going to say it. I was going to reference that. What's going on there, man?
I have no idea what this guy's had 3 weeks to finish this, and he chooses right outside my window to start working on this section. He's Argentinian, so he doesn't speak real good English.
It sounds like you're. It sounds like you're in a garage, a NASCAR garage.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell is going on out my window right now? But anyways, I digress. Sorry about the noise this week. I just don't. Is he really going to win 2 of the first 3 years of this Nashville race, including
back
2
to back?
It just would be hard to do, and it just seems too cliche that he needs to win. It's going to happen in the race that he won at last year.
Why was he DQ'd? In 21, why was he DQ'd? Do you remember?
I can't remember why he was DQ'd that year. These next gen DQs come out. I can't remember.
If anybody remembers, while we're live,
let us know. Yeah. So I didn't trust him. Hamlin, if you remember right, too, he was second in both stages last year. He led 114 laps from the pole.
Yeah.
He was also JGR was 1, 2, 3 when they all pit on that spot right there inside of 10 to go when you shouldn't have pit. He had a top 3 car that night, I feel like. So I don't know why it would change this year.
Yeah, I would take Hamlin over Truex. You have to take Hamlin over Elliott too.
Yep, exactly. So if I was taking Truex, I might as well go Hamlin. And Byron, it just feels he's probably the destined to win. He was third in 2021. He won Darlington this year. He was fourth in Dover in the spring. HMS is one of the last 2 and the only 2 Cup races there by 2 different drivers. Wouldn't it make kind of sense that Byron's the third driver? They can sweep it, go 1, 2, 3 straight years. Yep. Byron just seems to be the guy. And on intermediate tracks this season, so I'm talking about tracks 1.5 miles or less, first, third, first, second, eighth. He's just been good. So I would put him 8-1 feels right for the number, and that's the way you've got to go with him for those numbers.
Yeah, and let's remember, too, that fourth at Dover, he led 193 laps in that race when he finished fourth. What do you remember what happened to him last year?
I can look.
Something must have happened, obviously.
Yeah, he had something happen to where he finished 35th.
So
did he? I think he got into the. He wrecked. I think. Remember, there was like issues with the rain. It kind of was like lightning and then sprinkling. I think he wrecked kind of early.
Okay. Was that race? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, because Hamlin. The reason I had to stay away from Hamlin though myself was I was just I don't know. 2 of his last 3 races, it's almost like Larson over his last 3 races, and runner-up Illinois, but I can definitely see why you would take Hamlin and Elliott. For me, I basically decided to take a few more drivers a little bit further down because, again, as I mentioned, you only have 1 driver after your 11-1 shot drivers, so. That's the difference between you and me. Now, speaking of those 11-1 drivers, Bell and Chastain. So I took Chastain. So did you. CJ and you took Bell. I just can't take Bell right now. He only has no top 5 since his win on dirt. That's an issue for me. Yes, he was top 10 in both races here, so that's good. 6th at Dover. That's fine. I just don't like the way he's going right now. But Chastain, 5th and 2nd. That's excellent. Led over 90 laps in both Dover and Darlington races this year. So, it's almost like Chastain, and we've been talking a lot about him on the show today, is like maybe overdue.
I agree. That's why I went with, top threes both races. Should have won again. Darlington, remember like I mentioned, he got in the Larson at the end there, but he restarted on the front row. He was second. I would say that day, Larson, Truex, and Chastain had the three best cars at Darlington. Dover, he was good there too. I'm sorry, he was third and second respectively at Dover the last 2 years. That's my fault. I said here, he was third and second. He's been good at Nashville. He was runner-up and fifth in his 2 tries there. Darlington, he should have won. So if you combine all that, it's like, yeah, he should win. And plus, I'll tie it in with Bell and why I didn't take.
Yeah, but shouldn't he have better odds than Bell? Not better odds, but shouldn't Bell be like a couple of points behind Chastain?
You would think so. I feel like they both have been in the same boat these last month.
Yes.
They went from 1-2 in points to kind of the same boats. They kind of paired them together, which is why I chose both, because Nashville in the first year, Chevrolet led 252 of 300 laps. Last year, Toyota led 253 of 300 laps. It seemed Ford has led 11 total laps there. And if you look at intermediate tracks this season, Ford has not really been at the top of their game. It just seems like it is a Toyota versus Chevy type of race. If you look at Darlington, Ford led 9 laps that day. You look at Dover, Ford led 8 laps that day. They've led 10 combined here. So it's like, if I'm going to punt on most of the Ford drivers, and I think it's going to be Chevrolet versus Toyota, which is why I took Bell, is I'm going to go the Gibbs guys up front. I'm going to go with the Hendrick guys up front. And I might as well take probably one of the better Chevrolet drivers in Chastain, who just a month ago was leading the points. I don't want to overlook the fact that he's just kind of had a rough stretch.
Yep.
That this was the points leader a month ago, and you're still getting him at 11-1. And he's good at these tracks. I would hope in this off week, Justin Marks, his team owner, may have sat him down and said, all right, old Ross, come back. If you need to make aggressive moves, and you happen to wreck people, you know what? I've got your back. I'm sorry that we got this, because I know you're not doing it on purpose. I know you're not, because he's not the type of driver. He doesn't go out there and just wreck people. It's just he's overly aggressive. But as you've seen, that's what you got to be in this sport. The minute you kind of take that foot off a little bit, then comes the finishes of what we've seen of him lately.
Yeah.
29th, 22nd, 22nd, 10th. Let's let him get back to being Ross Chastain, and this is a great track for him to do that. So 11-1 plus Justin Marks. Don't also forget the fact that he's a Nashville guy. This is a track that means a lot to him because he was wanting at one time to move Trackhouse to downtown Nashville. That's where he wanted the team to be. He wanted it to be a big Nashville staple. People come in and out of the shop, kind of have glass up front. You can see him working on the cars. But when he got the Ganassi deal and he inherited their building and everything, he's like, that's too much to – now that I have a building, it'd be too much to undertake this building and move there. We'll operate out of that building. But this is a big race for him. So I think he probably would be okay with Chastain going out and winning this thing. So for 11-1, I had to go that direction.
This is a real good time to remind everybody that if you like the video, then press the like button. Very, very important. I don't know why. And I was telling this story to Jared Smola when we were doing the golf show yesterday. And I was giving him the whole, my own personal take on YouTube and the like button. And I remember when I first started watching YouTube videos, I didn't even know what it was about or what it was for. And so I never pressed it. I never really used it. And so, and even after a year, I hardly ever used it much. But then once, obviously, I became a more dialed-in channel owner and understood what it was about and so forth. Now, I have say I have 20 to 25 channels that I'll visit and frequent. I use if I like those channels, no matter whether I like the video or not, I'm pressing the like button almost like a reference. So when I go back to the channel, I'll look at a video and go, did I see that from this channel? And I'll see the like button was I had to have seen it. It's almost like a bookmark. Like I bookmarked the thing. And I do that almost because, I do that specifically because I know it'll help the channel whether I liked the video or not. and I like the channel. I like what he does. So even if I don't like, and again, if I have to go back to, I hit the like button, so I must have seen this already. Now I can move on to another take from someone else. I don't have to look at that one again. That's how many channels I'll watch on YouTube. So yeah, again, that's just the way I do it. I'm not saying that you should just like every video, but fact is, if you don't really understand what that's about, that if you like, it's very important to us channel owners. Just as much as subscribing almost. It's very valuable because once you've subscribed, that's it. You're done. You don't have to press that button anymore. But the like button, yes. I mean, if you like the videos, definitely hit that. It's very important for us. And the more likes we get on these channels, the better YouTube will treat us and give us more exposure so we can get other viewers to watch the show that may not have ever even understood that the show was available. So, how about you? What do you do at YouTube with the likes and so forth?
I don't get on a whole lot.
Yeah, I know you don't
my
visit it
kids-
as much as I do.
My
that's for
kids
sure.
are the ones that are live on YouTube. But yeah, as much as I can.
You should ask them if they click the like button.
I'll have to ask them.
Yeah.
I know they watch a lot of it on our Roku through at home, where I at least can see what they're watching.
Okay.
So I don't know.
I can imagine. Yeah.
How they do through the TV, but who knows? They probably could.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, on TV. It's a little bit, you got to navigate, but you can do it. Okay, so Blaney's next at 12-1. And here we go again. Another situation where I'm the only one taking Blaney, and I get it. You mentioned the Fords, but the way I'm looking at it, third here last year, third Dover, ninth Darlington. He's doing better at tracks that, whether it's Ford or his past history, has said it's just not your MO, doesn't fit. He's doing better now this year on those types of setups. So I just, once again, see, when I see Blaney, when I see third last year, third and ninth Darlington, and you're one of the hottest drivers in the sport, I'm going, why am I only getting 12-1? So I'm taking it. If that's Chase Elliott, 6-1. 7-1.
Yeah, I was gonna say 6-1. Yep.
So I'm just taking advantage of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I almost did. The only reason I didn't was the Ford factor. I thought when I'm gonna play catch up, I might as well just take the drivers I feel good about. He was my next driver on the list. That if I was gonna take, if anybody from Ford is gonna win, you gotta think it's gonna be him. Hence why I think he's the top Ford driver, odds wise, but. Yeah, I want to see more of the Ford camp in general this weekend. Let's see what they can do. Granted, maybe the natural grip from a night race might help things too. We don't know that yet, so we'll see.
And it is his first race after a bad. I mean, we all know what happened to him at Sonoma, and we've talked about this with Blaney before. You know, I don't know how he's going to handle that. I'm sure he was really upset, and nobody did it on purpose. But it's, you know, the whole Mr. Nice Guy thing, you know, whether they did it on purpose or not, you might have to let people know about how you feel because he lost. I mean, he went from being, you know, stealing a top 10 to having a nothing, a zero, a zip. And boy, that's not good. I mean, if that happens in the playoffs, you're screwed. So I just want to see how he reacts from that because we've seen Blaney before. You know, he could be a streaky driver. And if he gets like one bad race, what does he do the next race? And is this the start of him going into a dry spell again? So I'm interested to see how he reacts in this one. Maybe it helped him to have the week off. By the way, before we move on and wrap this up, the track in general, is this an okay race? Is this a boring race? What are we dealing with here?
Last year was better, the next gen, but not great. It's a tough one to pass on just because it's a concrete track. The resin over the PJ1, the resin has seemed to work there. So I'll be curious. The only thing with a night race is a lot of times night races with natural grip kind of become a single group track, which Nashville has in the past been. So I'm just curious what this one is going to look like with that aspect involved.
Were they night races?
Last year ended up being a night race because it had all those lightning delays.
Okay.
The first year wasn't. It was a middle of the day race. So, yeah, I'll be curious. I think the next gen can spruce it up a little bit, but how much is going to be the question: is how good can this race truly be?
And look, fingers crossed, because this is one of those tracks you need to have in the series. It's Nashville. I mean, you have to have a race there. So let's hope it works out. Reddick is 16-1, Logano 18-1, and CJ was the only one to put money on either driver. He put money on Reddick. Have to ask him why. I don't see it.
Yeah.
Even the last couple of races, it's just not. He's going through a rough patch right now. And Logano, yes, he's got back-to-back third-place finishes, but they weren't very. It's almost like Kyle's, especially the last race. We know that they didn't really earn it. But I don't see Logano as, like you said, Ford. He's definitely not showing it this year at Dover or Darlington.
No, and he kind of backed his way into both, like you said, those third place. It wasn't like he was there on merit. It was just kind of other people made mistakes, and he had the right pit call at the right time that got him there. But this track, as we said, it's rewarded dominance. I don't know why that's going to change for a manufacturer to be dominant. And if Ford has led 11 total laps there and has struggled on intermediates this year, I just don't see them magically appearing this year. So Blaney would be the Ford guy I would take, and maybe someone like a Kevin Harvick. Pair of Xfinity wins, 5th and 10th at his 2 Cup Series starts. He was runner-up at Darlington. The only thing is that runner-up at Darlington is his only top 5 in his last 9 races, too.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's kind of knocking down the door. Reddick, 18th in both Cup starts there, 7th in Dover, 22nd in Darlington. He's finished 22nd or worse in 3 of the last 4 races. He's probably rightly priced at 16-1, and
yes,
I wouldn't take him. Wallace getting that next group, that was kind of the last line of defense and why I took this weekend. And in Nashville, he was 20th and 12th, but 12th for Bubba last year was pretty good.
Yeah, that's true.
And now you look at on intermediate tracks this year, he's got 4 top 5 finishes in 5 tries. He's won Kansas. He seems to be good on tracks like this. And as that stat I go back to, Toyota led 253 of 300 laps last year. And we know he's been running better this year. And you get him for 22-1. If I'm going to go all in with that Toyota camp, I might as well add Bubba to it for 22-1. So that's why I went with him. And then the rest of the guys behind him, they just have not either at the track, on the season, or a little bit of both, have not kind of equated out to much.
Well, first off, I did put a few bucks on Harvick to get my money back, because at this point, that's really all it's about. Because I'm with you. You just can't trust him to lead laps and win a race, but he could be in position if things work out. And if he's in position, maybe he gets lucky. Wallace was probably the one driver that I left off that I could have had money on, so I was almost there at Wallace. But I did put a few bucks on a few of the other drivers, and the one I like the most, and I'm a little bit surprised maybe that you didn't throw a couple of bucks this way, is Chris Buescher. I mean, he's 80-1. Yes, they had the bad results last year, but again, this is this year. And he's 9th at Dover, 10th at Darlington, and even Keselowski, 8th at Dover, 4th at Darlington. So they've got, they seem to work well at this this type of track. But Buescher's been a lot better than Keselowski lately, with 5 top 10s in his last 7 and 2 top 5s. So I'm getting 80-1. So I'm going to definitely, I put a few bucks on Buescher. I put a few bucks on Keselowski just because, again, both of them are doing well on these tracks. But I do like Buescher more than Keselowski, especially because I'm getting double the money. And then I just put a buck each on Stenhouse and Cindric. Again, I just keep thinking that Cindric is getting close. He's got to close a race, though, first. He was 7th last year here. He's 150-1. But Stenhouse, I'm a little bit more confident in. I like his results here, 6th and 21. And he's steady at Dover and Darlington. He's been very steady this year. So I think, anytime I'm going to get 100-1 on Stenhouse, if he has a little bit of prior experience in a positive way at a track, I'm going to do it, because I still don't think Ricky Stenhouse is getting any credit so far.
No, and the RFK guys, I almost took too. The Ford thing, I just punted on all Fords. But Blaney and those two would be the two, because if you remember, right, Grant, you can't really compare the two because of the size. But Bristol is a concrete track, and Buescher won Bristol last year. And Keselowski, remember, led a bunch of laps and blew a tire. He probably was going to win Bristol last year. So RFK can do it, but with Ford leading 11 total laps there,
Sure.
I just struggle to think RFK, they're on the rise, but I think we all agree they're not there yet. Is this going to magically beat the Gibbs and Hendrick and Trackhouse cars on Sunday? But for their odds are definitely good to take. I did think it was interesting that Buescher, who arguably has better stats, is 80 to 1. And
Yeah.
Keselowski was 45 to 1. That baffled me.
Yeah.
Buescher is a steal compared to those two. And Stenhouse, as you said, is a good pick. Is he really going to win? But he's a great play for a top 10. You can grab that one too, because
good fantasy pick.
Here.
Yep,
he's a great fantasy pick. And even someone like Almirola, I looked at. Granted, it's a Ford, that's why I didn't pick him. And it'd be hard pressed to find Almirola of all people to be the Ford that win. But he was on the pole for this race in 2021 and finished 4th, and he qualified 11th last year. And I feel like they're starting Stuart Haas has shown a little bit more promise. Granted, they just made a bunch of crew chief changes. There's an announcement coming tomorrow for Kevin Harvick's replacement for next year. You could kind of see the organization's trying to go in a positive forward direction. And this hasn't been a terrible track for him the 2 years he's been there. And you get him for 100 to 1. He can stay out. I mean, they're to the point where it's probably not – these guys are going to have to win, which I think is a different set of circumstances than last year because you had a bunch of parity and there were so many different winners. The points were closer. Now I think you look at there's only a handful of guys that can probably point their way to the playoffs because we know that's going to happen. Especially after now that Busch has 3 wins and Truex has 2 wins and Byron's got 3 wins. I don't think we're going to see 16 different regular season winners. So you're going to have some guys points their way in. But I think your Bowmans and Suarez and Ty Gibbs and those guys, those few little guys that are on the bubble can point in. But if you look behind them, there's a lot of guys that I feel like are going to be in a position that just go for the win. There's especially all these guys that have been hit with penalties over the Chase Elliott's, Chase Briscoe's, the Eric Jones, Austin Dillon.
True.
Those guys if they could stay on the lead lap, then what would stop them from another situation like last year where the caution comes you know what? We're staying out. We got to win. I don't care that I've had 80 laps on this set of tires. We're staying out. And if you get enough of those guys stay out, that buffer between those cars and the cars that did stop could be enough to get you a win. So that's where this weekend gets interesting is guys like Almirola, Briscoe, Austin Dillon, Stenhouse, who's already won. They could gamble and say, you know what, we're going to do the complete opposite of what those guys do in front. And it might come out to be a win. So that's where some of these guys to gamble on which is just that, it's gambling. It's worth to throw a few bucks their way.
Yeah, and again, these next 2 weeks, who knows what's going to happen, especially next week with the street race, and then Atlanta is potentially a wild card based on the setup there. So yeah, and the other guy that maybe I was thinking about just keeping an eye on is Gibbs, because he's in Kurt's car. And Kurt was 2nd last year, 8th in 21. And Gibbs has been okay at Darlington and Dover. Still don't think he's ready to win, though. So
no, and he was 4th in the Xfinity race here last year.
Okay.
So he's been good there, but I'm with you. That's the only reason he was, other than Reddick, who we just talked about a little bit ago, they're the only 2 Toyotas I didn't take. I just don't feel like Gibbs is ready to necessarily win this race. So granted, it could happen, but Willie 35 to 1 was a little steep. So I thought if he was more 70 to 1, 60 to 1, I probably would have thrown a dollar or 2 his way. But 35 to 1 just wasn't enticing to take.
Yeah, I don't know why he's been in that area for a while now. I don't know what's up with that.
No.
He hasn't shown or proved that he should be in the same zip code as Bowman, who never gets any breaks with the odds. No. So all right, top 3 picks. Larson, Truex, and Byron.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. Those are the 3, and if I give a long shot, would be Bubba Wallace.
Bubba's a long shot. All right, yeah, same thing. I mean, Truex and Byron at the top, and top long shot for me would be Buescher. Okay, so next week should be interesting.
Yep.
Chicago, can't wait to hear your analysis on this. You know,
Not much.
yeah,
That won't be
we're not
much.
going to have a lot of prep. But I
No,
mean, you know, historically to go after. So
I do have a few stats of inaugural races of winners that we'll go over, but past that, yeah, never been a street course race in 75 or 74 past NASCAR Cup Series years. So this will be the first.
So it should be. We'll try to see. Maybe there's some. Is there any video that we can take a look at, or no? It's just completely new. There's nothing for us to look at.
Completely new. Yeah.
Okay.
Just other than like the renderings of videos, which can kind of get updated since then. Yeah. There's nothing at all.
All right. So again, next week we'll do it all over again, hopefully, and then after that is Atlanta. And again, we'll let you know next week then about if we're still ready. Oh, and then the night races, like you said, this is like the night portion of the schedule.
Race. Yeah.
So we get a late Chicago and we get a night Atlanta. So if we do that Atlanta show, we'll be doing it at, I guess after you put the kids to bed.
Yeah, it'd be after that because at that point, I think that's a 7:00 start. So
yeah,
7:00 broadcast start.
Broadcast start. So
yeah.
So by the way, all NBC now.
Yeah, NBC portion this week in Chicago or NBC. I know Atlanta's USA. Some of the races.
NBC USA. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, Eric. Appreciate it. Good to have you back after our last hiatus week for the season, and we'll talk again next week.
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah, I've got all sorts.